you feel the USA cricket has not produced an American face, get that emotion of people to watch the game?
The IPL auction, one of the biggest events in cricket. Forget the on-field stuff. I would argue there's more viewership for the IPL auction than even some IPL matches.
What do you think are the limitations being an associate nation with not a full member nation? What benefit could teams like Nepal and USA get if we were a full nation who would play the test game?
2018 at World Cricket League Division 2, where Nepal and Canada went down to the final ball on the final day of round robin play, and Karen KC wins it for Nepal. It's the greatest match I've ever covered anywhere in the world.
So Peter, once again, welcome to Nepal.
Thank you, Avash.
How many times have you been to Nepal?
This is my third trip. First trip was in 2010 at the World Cricket League Division 5 tournament. I was coming from Dubai. USA had participated in the T20 World Cup qualifier in 2010 that Afghanistan and Ireland made out of to go to the World Cup in the West Indies. And USA basically had a month-long tour in February of 2010. So they spent 2 weeks in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And then the team came straight from there to here, and I was covering them. That was my first overseas tour, covering the men's team, actually. I had covered the under-19 team in New Zealand at the under-19 World Cup in January. And I think I was home for literally 72 hours.
Wow.
In between events. And it was all very last minute. I had done the coverage in New Zealand, freelance for the website I was working for at the time called Dream Cricket. And I had also started doing work for ESPN Cricket Info at the time, freelance, but I wasn't fully contracted to either. And so I went to New Zealand to cover the under-19 World Cup. And that was a last minute thing. And towards the end of that trip, I was expecting to come back home to New Jersey and relax a little bit. And the editor said, "Hey, everybody's enjoying your coverage. Would you like to go to Dubai and then Nepal to cover the men's team?" Wow. And said, "Yeah." And I thought, I was expecting to be home a little bit longer than this. And at the time, my brother was ill. He had thyroid cancer. And so I literally came home, went to see him in the hospital because he had just gotten his thyroid removed, and then gave him a hug and went straight back to Nepal and Dubai on a plane. Wow. And it was a very hectic time in 2010, but it was a fulfilling time as well. And
things happen in Nepal. The crazy game.
This is true. Crazy is one word to use for it. There's lots of other words that can be used. Memorable for me. It was my baptism by fire of being in Nepal, I guess you could say. I mean, I had such an enjoyable time on that tour. But that is obviously what everybody remembers, the final group stage match between Nepal and USA.
The game before that, what happened? You were there, you were writing about it, because at that time, you talk about the broadcast. It was just starting in Nepal. Private companies were taking the broadcast. Before that, it was all state-owned televisions. Those were doing the basic broadcast and everything. But that was the baby steps for Nepal. And the broadcast at one point, it went off. But you were there updating about the game itself. Tell us, take us through.
Yeah, so from what I remember, Kantipur TV was the rights holder at the time, and they were showing the match locally. And I remember there were a number of U.S. embassy officials that had come to the game. They had hosted the USA national team a few days earlier at an event in the embassy, and so they'd gotten to know the players, and they wanted to come out to support the players. Some of the staff were in the ground. Not everybody was. A lot of the staff were also still in the embassy watching or at their homes. And then you obviously had the players' families back in the U.S. or elsewhere and watching from wherever they were, and the U.S. fans and even neutral fans, places in Europe and Africa and elsewhere in Asia and anywhere that people love cricket were following the game because it was such a huge game. USA came into the match needing a win. They had just lost to Singapore the match before. They won the first 3 matches of the tournament, but they needed a win in that game. And Nepal had come in 4-0. Singapore, I believe, was 3-1. And what I remember was the match day before. So when USA lost to Singapore, the CEO at the time, Don Lockerbie, gave this stirring speech on the team bus right before they got off to go into the hotel. And I was fortunate enough on that entire tour to be allowed to ride the team bus. It was more for logistical ease because USA had started the tour in Dubai. And because they were playing Afghanistan on the tour, there was huge security presence. And the team manager basically said to me, we know you're supposed to be covering the team independently. You're not part of the team, but for security purposes, we're inviting you to ride the team bus with a police escort because there's all sorts of complications and we think it would be best for you, just as an American citizen, ride the bus for your safety. And so that had become a customary thing. I was not taking taxis on that tour. I was basically riding the team bus. And so rode the team bus in Dubai and rode the team bus every match in Nepal. So they lost to Singapore, and Don Lockerbie gives this Newt Rockney rah-rah speech basically saying, you guys are Americans. You are the best in the world. Everybody is aspiring to be you in the American dream and all this stuff. And show me what you've got and show everybody and show the world that you're Americans and this is what Americans do. We're winners and you got to go out and win. And everybody's going to be against you. You're going to have 20,000 Nepalese fans screaming for Nepal, and it's just going to be the 11 of you on your own, but you're strong enough to band together and overcome it all and whatever. And so, if I was a player, I don't know how I would have felt, but even as a non-player, I was getting goosebumps listening to Don Lockerbie. So this was setting the stage from the American perspective going into that match. And they came out extremely fired up for that game. They fielded first, got on top of Nepal very early, and they took the crowd out of the game from very early on. I think they had Nepal maybe 30 for 3 or 40 for 3 early on. From memory, they bowled them out for somewhere around 150. And then the chase begins, and USA was kind of going about it methodically. And Sushil Nadkarni, who had a really awful tour up to that stage, he had been coming back from injury. He had torn an Achilles tendon. He had a serious injury in August of 2009 at a national tournament in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And he was so crucial to the team. He had been a dominant figure through the time he made his debut in 2005, 2006, up to that point. And they were really desperate to have him back in the team. Usually Achilles tendons injuries, they take 9 to 12 months to come back from, and he was trying to rush back in 6 months. And he was clearly not fit. He was not 100% fit. Under different circumstances, he should not have been on that tour. And he had an awful tour in the Afghanistan match in Dubai. USA was only chasing, I think, 130, and he came out to open the innings, and I think he was on like 5 off 15 balls or something like that, and they were out of the chase, and a lot of it was pinned on him because he got the team off to such a bad start, and it was in contrast to his reputation. He was such an explosive player. He was nicknamed the Butcher. I mean, he would literally savage these bowling attacks anywhere. He was used to scoring 80 off 50 balls and 70 off 40 balls, those kind of innings. And here he was just really scratching his way through the whole tour. And so he comes into the Nepal game and they put him down from usually opening the batting. I think they dropped him down to 5. Part of it was because he had been struggling, and also he was USA's best player spin. And Nepal historically had such an arsenal of left arm spinners. You had Basan Regmi, and Rahul Vishwakarma, who was a teenager phenom at the time, had done well. And they had Sanjay Megmi bowling off spin. They had so many spinners, but primarily as a left-handed bat, he was one of the few left-handed bats in the team. And Nepal was using so many left-arm spinners, they wanted to have him in the middle order to combat that when the spinners came on, and it worked almost to perfection. He's building his innings and doing it methodically, and the crowd is still kind of quiet. And then he was in his 40s, and then he swept. I don't know if it was Basant Regmi or some other bowler, but he swept, I think, 2 consecutive sixes to go to 50. And as the second one is going over the rope to bring up his half century, the ball is going this way over the rope. And then in the opposite direction, there's stones and rocks and all sorts of bottles and stuff that are being thrown onto the field, because that was the tipping point. The fans just had enough, and this powder keg that had been building suddenly, boom, it explodes. And all sorts of mayhem ensued it. And you could sense that something was building up even as a first-timer to Nepal, because you had all these police that were lining the boundary with what looked like, heavy armor in preparation for something that was going to potentially happen, which did happen. And then initially the players were told to stay on the field because the fans weren't going to be able to throw that far to hit them if they stayed in the middle. And then the police said, all right, there's a little bit of a gap here where things have quieted down. You got to sprint off the field. And then when they were trying to sprint off the field, and this was not just the U.S. players who were batting, but the whole Nepal side too, they were unsure of what was going to unfold. And so they were trying to get off the field as well for their own safety. And it was just a very chaotic situation. And from a television standpoint, the TV feed was cut. So most people who were watching had no idea any of this was going on. The TV feed just disappeared to commercial and never came back for a good hour or so. And so the only way to find out what was happening was through people who were in the ground updating online. And so I was one of the few reporters, at least from a foreign perspective, that was there giving updates and telling people there's a riot going on here and people are throwing stuff on the field, and the players have had to be rushed off the field. And there was kind of a mini stampede kind of behind the pavilion at TU Stadium, where people were being ushered out. I think it's quieted down, but then there was like a gap or a lull where they thought there was an opening where they could try and get back in and restart things. And it was a wild time. And yet if you were not in the ground, you were in the dark. And so people who were at home, whether it was the embassy officials who were watching on Kantipur TV or other Nepalese fans watching on Kantipur TV, or people who were overseas, everybody was wondering what on earth is going on here. And so at that point in time in 2010, it might be hard to believe now, thinking back 16 years, but it was basically down to online updates. And Twitter was basically brand new at that point in time. And, people were coming to my coverage to find out what was happening. And I had been covering USA less than a year at this point in terms of different national teams. And not many people knew who the hell I was. And then suddenly I was getting an awful lot of traffic from this event, and that kind
on your Twitter,
on Twitter and Facebook and whatever else. And that kind of helped develop my reputation in terms of people being able to come to find me for coverage of USA national teams primarily. But in this instance, it also overflowed into Nepal.
Nepalese have always, from the very start, Nepalese are very active in Twitter. We got some cricket analysts, few working with CAN currently. They're pretty active on Twitter. And I think there was this time when one of the telecom companies had given Twitter for free, so people could easily check out Twitter. So it is a big thing. But when people started doing that, I remember one of my senior brothers, he is also a big producer in a comedy show right now. So he proudly told me once, I was one of those people throwing the bottles. One of the bottles at the very start was mine. So did you feel now, looking at what Nepali cricket has come to, right? At that time, I think it was Division 5, that in the actual cricketing big map, nobody cared about USA or Nepal, apart from people that follow the American cricket or the Nepali cricket, right? So at that time, you could see 20,000 fans or maybe 15,000 fans flooding up the ground. Did you see the passion of people of Nepal before we even played the World Cup? Did you feel that?
100%. And I think it's one of the things that made that event so dramatic and so tense and so thrilling in different ways, was the fact that this was, in theory, on paper, low-level cricket. You said it, Division 5.
True.
Who cares? In the grand scheme of things. Okay, this is not India, Pakistan. This is not England, Australia.
Yeah.
And yet, if you were there, this felt like a big time environment. It felt like a big time atmosphere. And that's not something that is commonplace in associate cricket for USA or for other countries. Earlier on that tour, USA had played Afghanistan, and that was in front of 15,000 or so people in Abu Dhabi, I believe. And again, it was 15,000 Afghan fans and the USA CEO and the US Consul General from Abu Dhabi and one or two other US board officials. And that was it, who was supporting USA. And there was some external media attention because of the fact that USA and Afghanistan were playing in cricket for the first time. They should have played in Jersey in 2008 at the previous Division 5 tournament. USA had made the semifinals along with Nepal, Afghanistan, and Jersey. But USA lost to Jersey in their semifinal. Afghanistan beat Nepal in their semifinal, and then it was Afghanistan and Jersey who went in the final. So if that match had taken place in Jersey in a little bit more docile circumstances, I don't know if the USA-Afghanistan match that happened in 2010 would have had as much media attention and notoriety around it. But Afghanistan won their semifinal in 2008, used that as the launching pad to move up the 50-over ladder to go from Division 5 to Division 1 and get ODI status in 2009. Meanwhile, USA is left behind. Nepal is left behind because, again, USA and Nepal both lost their semifinals. So they're stuck in Division 5 after 2008. They play in that Division 5 tournament in 2010 that Nepal hosts. And if you're on the island of Jersey, you might have 50 or 100 local Jersey supporters come out to watch cricket. You're not playing in front of 20,000 people. If you're playing in the US at that point in time, USA only had a stadium facility in Florida, which had capacity for 5,000 permanent seats. You could expand it to 10,000. That's where they hosted World Cup matches, T20 World Cup matches in 2024. And they've had India tours there and US Indies matches there. It's been used for a lot of events over the years. But when big ticket teams come to town, it gets filled up. When USA is playing there, nobody shows up, which is kind of unfortunate. And so you begin to appreciate the passion that the Nepalese fans have for coming out and supporting Nepal. So yeah, when you are used to and accustomed to covering USA matches or any associate cricket matches where there's 5 people or 10 people, it might be just family members of players, or it might be just a few locals who have time on their hands and they're not really engaged the way a really hardcore passionate fan would be. You begin to appreciate a hell of a lot more when you come to a place like Nepal. And especially at that Division 5 standard at that point in time, it was incredible to witness all the support that the Nepalese fans were showing for Nepal and the tournament overall. It wasn't just that one day. I mean, the tournament in general had fantastic support, in particular for the Nepal matches, but still, you understood what passion there was in this part of the world for cricket, and the fact that if they could get their act together and rise up from Division 5 to Division 1, get ODI status, get T20I status, then there would be a lot greater visibility outside of Nepal and the rest of the world would hopefully begin to appreciate what Nepal has in terms of not just quality on the field, but off the field. And I think it's fantastic the fact that 2018, 2019 timeframe when they got ODI status, and then everybody was given T20I status by the ICC in 2018, 2019 as well. And that has opened up some doors for Nepal and hopefully provided a blueprint that other countries can see, hey, if this is what Nepal is capable of, not just on the field, but off the field in terms of fan support. I mean, look at you. You've got the Nepal jersey on today, Avash. I bought one in one of the local shops a week ago. Okay,
We're playing the World Cup.
It's a fantastic jersey. I love it. The T10 sports jersey. It's got the sun on the shoulder, the two parts of the shoulder. But I love
and the moon.
The sun and the moon. Okay, and you got the Himalayas down lower on the stomach. It's a wonderfully designed jersey. You got to give them a lot of credit for what they've come up with there, and encompassing all the things that are part of Nepalese culture. And
T10 also happens to be our main title sponsor.
Yeah, and congratulations, and I mean they're fantastic. They were at one time a sponsor for the U.S. team as well. Not the case anymore, unfortunately. But you know, you can buy a jersey quite easily here in Nepal. Like you said, you've got one. I went and found one. You drive by I'm staying in Tamil at a hotel in Tamil, and when I'm traveling in a taxi on the way from my hotel to get to TU Stadium or to go to Mulpani to the other ground, you pass by minimum 2-3 shops on each route, if not more, where you can find Nepal cricket jerseys.
You can just walk to our superstore, Bhat Bateni.
Yeah.
And they have it there. Also, Johnny Barron, right?
Yes.
The commentator.
Yes.
So Johnny is here. He was mentioning me about buying jersey for his children. 2 sons. So I think maybe after the podcast, we're planning to go and buy him 2 jerseys. And it's easily available now.
I put a message out showing that, hey, look, you can get a Nepal jersey. And I had messages from people back in the US saying, ooh, I want one of those. Can you buy a couple for me? You know, get me double XL, get me a large, get me medium, whatever. I'll pay you back. And so there's enthusiasm even from fans of teams that they don't even support Nepal, but they just love the jersey. True. It's such an amazing design. True. And people want to get behind that, and you appreciate that because in the US, you can't just walk down the street in any city. I mean, here in Kathmandu, you can, and that's fantastic, and I love it. And again, it's another feather in the cap of the culture here, the cricket culture in particular, that there's such support for the team. You walk by other shops, you walk by appliance shops, mobile phone shops, and they're running promotions, ticket promotions, enter to win a chance to go to Mumbai to watch Nepal at the World Cup. I've seen at least 4 or 5 of those from major corporate sponsors. And again, that highlights the support that the fans have and that there's something that engages people and people have interest in it. And in the US, unfortunately, not only can you not walk down the street in New York City or Dallas or San Francisco and buy a USA World Cup jersey, they're not running fan promotions to send people to the World Cup. Go watch USA in Mumbai or go watch USA in Colombo or go watch USA in Chennai. There's nobody running, McDonald's isn't running a sponsorship for that. Coca-Cola or any other, Ford or United Airlines. None of those companies are running sponsorships to, hey, come watch USA at the World Cup. They'll do that for the Olympics. When the Winter Olympics is starting in another week in Italy, right? And you'll see all sorts of advertisements and promotions for support Team USA at the Olympics. The T20 World Cup is starting 24 hours after the Olympics begin in Italy. And yet you've got support up here all over the place on TV and sponsors and in broad culture and pop culture and sports culture, people wanting to get behind Team USA, whether it's the Team USA ice hockey team or the figure skaters or the speed skaters or any other Olympic sports that USA has excelled in over the years. Again, these are not sports. When people bring up USA, cricket's going to struggle in the USA to catch on because, there's just too much competition from the mainstream sports. People love the NFL too much. People love the NBA too much. Or, how is Saurabh Neehwalkar or Harmeet Singh going to compete with LeBron James or Giannis Antetokounmpo or Shohei Ohtani or, Jack Hughes or Sidney Crosby, or you go up and down the list, take your pick of famous athletes or coming up in the Super Bowl, Sam Darnold.
I think the problem here is because, you talk about MLS, the Major League Soccer, right?
Yeah.
It was there. It was doing good for us, at least from what we see from outside. But once big names like Messi and Suarez started flooding in, the team started getting those big names, and then things started happening. And I think it's all controlled by the BCCI, especially with the Indian players not being able to go away from their IPL. If they could go and play the Major League Cricket, that would be some kind of wouldn't it bring some kind of change in getting the hype, bringing people in the stadium for Major League Cricket?
It would get people in the stadium, but I'm speaking more broadly in terms of just the whole culture in the US. I mean, when they hosted World Cup matches, you had Rohit and Kohli coming to play in New York. They were there and you had 30,000 fans, but it was a here today, gone tomorrow event. And there was very little support in terms of sustained support for the U.S. national team, because again, those are here today, gone tomorrow events. When USA played India, it was getting some publicity in the media, getting some attention for the players, and they benefited from it in terms of parlaying that into franchise deals. Guys coming to the Nepal Premier League, or guys going to the T20 or the SA20, and things like that beyond MLC. And that win over Pakistan was huge in terms of building some notoriety and generating some respect for the players within the cricket community. Okay. But outside of that, again, it's out of sight, out of mind. Once the World Cup ended, a lot of people in the American sports community who suddenly discovered, USA's got a cricket team. They just beat Pakistan. Wow. USA, all that kind of stuff. They've gone 18 months without playing a test nation in T20Is. They're one of two teams that's going to go into this World Cup without playing a T20I against a test nation. Nepal had the famous win against the West Indies in Sharjah. Yeah. Okay. Italy got to play Ireland just now in three T20s in the UAE. USA and Canada are the only two teams that went between the end of the previous T20 World Cup and now without having played a single test nation in the T20I. So if you're not scheduling those games and not getting support in a high profile way, people are going to forget about you. And it's not a case of, people don't like cricket because the Super Bowl is about to happen. And, the Super Bowl is going to be on February 9th and the T20 World Cup starts on February 7th. And, they're too close together, and Americans are all going to be focused on the Super Bowl because you've got the Seahawks and the Patriots, and it's Sam Darnold and Drake May and all that, blah, blah, blah. I don't buy that. I mean, because at the same time that the Super Bowl is being played on that weekend, the Olympics are starting, and everybody in America is going to be tuned into the Olympics for sports that they generally could care less about for the 4 years in between the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. I mean, people will tune into curling. You'll get fans suddenly are like, I can't get enough of this curling. Wow, the stones, and they're going to get in the house, and oh my God, the block and this. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They're like, but I heard what they're saying. Blah, blah, blah. And they're watching because they want to support USA and they want to see USA win. So I never buy the argument that cricket can't fit into the sports landscape in America because, there's too much NFL or there's too much NBA or too much NHL or too much baseball or too much MLS now. If you think about since the arrival of Beckham and what that helped spur and more recently, obviously Messi. I mean, you walk around places and schools in different cities in the US and even overseas. Mm-hmm. So I live in Manchester now in England. My wife is British. And the number one American sports jersey I see walking around Manchester is the pink and black Inter Miami FC jersey of Lionel Messi.
Yes.
Okay. So that tells you the power of Messi. But, the fact that, again, that's soccer is arguably the 5th most popular sport in America. It's comfortably behind baseball, NFL, ice hockey, and basketball. Okay. And yet, Messi jerseys are everywhere. Inter Miami FC merchandise is everywhere. Right? And that shows what's capable. And, you look at other sports, the Australian Open is going on right now. The tennis players. The success of Americans over the years in tennis. I mean, in recent times, it's not been as much, at least on the men's side. But, historically, you had Pete Sampras, who was one of my heroes growing up, and Andre Agassi and Jim Courier and Michael Chang and Andy Roddick. And then on the women's side, obviously, Serena Williams, one of the greatest athletes of all time and the greatest women's tennis player of all time. And Venus, her sister. And you've had Coco Gauff and other players who've represented USA and won major tournaments. And, tennis is like down the pecking order behind the major franchise sports in the US. And then, you look at golf, Tiger Woods, one of the most recognizable athletes in the world, playing golf.
Synonym to golf.
Okay. That's down the pecking order. Golf is not a sport that is in the forefront of everybody's minds like baseball, basketball, football, and hockey are, NFL. But Tiger Woods is arguably the most recognizable living athlete in America right now. Okay. You look at Michael Phelps.
True.
Again, greatest gold medal winner of all time in the Olympics with all of his swimming success. Okay. There's not people who are tuning in to watch swimming on a daily basis. But when the Olympics comes around, again, to reinforce the point, people want to support a winner.
I think it's more about the patriotism that America follows when you talk about Olympics. Something I want to tell you is just like NFL is followed in the America, right? Till a few years back, football was crazy sports because for our top tier A division league, people would flood in. There were community. There are teams that are more than 90 years old clubs, right? So in transition, what happened was football started going down, and suddenly cricket was that sport which was like just like in America. Okay, it's there in Nepal. I remember when I went out to play in the streets and in fields, my cousins and my neighbors, they were like, who plays cricket in Nepal? And it was, I think, early 2000s when Nepal won its first state championship. Then it started coming in the news. And I think it's a gradual growth that happens in the sports itself. And there's one thing, just like I mentioned ago, it's about the Major League Cricket, right? But I think it starts with those grassroots because you see Nepal did play the World Cup in 2014 and that gave a big limelight to cricket itself. Just like if you talk about India, once they won it in the 83, then cricket started with Kapil Dev and Sunil Gavaskar and everything. And where do you see the gap? I think it's similar to the following of cricket is similar to Nepal and USA, but now Nepal in the past few years, it has strived forward because we had those franchise league. I'm sure you know about, there was a 3-4 franchise league when the CAN committee was suspended and it gradually came down to Nepal Premier League. And if you see Dipendra Singh Aire walking down, it's no less than Mahendra Singh Dhoni walking down for Chennai Super King, the crowd roars, right? So isn't about that one player that a country produces. We had ours. We had Shakti Gauchun. We had Paras Khadka.
Shakti the power.
Yes. So I think it's what Nepali football is missing right now. Yep. It's the faces. Because if you talk about our women's football, we have Sabitra Bhandari Samba, who's playing for a club called Wellington Phoenix, which is from New Zealand and plays in the Australian Women's League. Yep. Right? We have Preeti, who's playing in the Gulf countries. We have Rekha with faces. So that's what I want to come to the point. Do you feel the USA cricket has not produced an American face that could get that emotion of people to watch the game?
I think grassroots is a significant part that's missing. I mean, in the American sports culture, you have what's so embedded in the other sports is that you have players who come up through high school and college. And so people have an emotional attachment in their communities. If you know that a player like LeBron James, he's so closely associated with Akron, Ohio. That's part of his identity. And it was so huge when he came back to Ohio and to return to the Cleveland Cavaliers for his second stint with them after he had gone and won titles with the Miami Heat. He comes back to the Cavaliers and wins an NBA title with them and beats the Golden State Warriors. And that, I think, was far more memorable for people in Ohio who grew up with him. He goes to St. Vincent, St. Mary's in high school, goes straight to the NBA. So he was somebody who was always identified within the Ohio community and the Akron community. And if he goes and wins an NBA title, he leaves the Cavs, goes to sign with the Miami Heat and wins the title with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and that team. People in Ohio are not going to have an emotional attachment, but when he returns to the Cavs and wins the title, the whole Akron community and the broader Ohio community, that means something to them. And all those people, especially who would have been teammates with him at St. Vincent, St. Mary in Akron, I mean, that's something that people connect with. You can say, oh, I remember when I played with LeBron when he was only 16 or 17, or he was my high school classmate, or he was, I sat next to him in English class, whatever, all those kinds of things. And then I saw him play for my high school team. And those things are important to Americans. I'm sure they're important to people all over the world, but in America specifically, the high school and the NCAA university sports culture is very unique to America. You don't have college football or college basketball, university basketball or university football drawing 100,000 fans like you have in professional franchise. Manchester United gets 65,000 fans every game at Old Trafford. Okay. The University of Manchester does not have more than 10 people showing up to watch club football. If the University of Manchester has a football team playing against the University of Leeds or whatever, right? 10 people might show up to that. The friends and families of the players, if such a thing even exists. I don't even know. Whereas if you compare that to NFL, right? Obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, when they play the New England Patriots, they're going to draw 70,000, 80,000 fans. That's a professional game. But when the University of Michigan takes on Ohio State in one of the biggest rivalries in college football, 100,000 fans come out to watch 18, 19, 20-year-olds play university level football. Okay. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world because there's such a long history and an emotional attachment to college football, college basketball, the university sports culture. And that helps keep it's the lifeblood, the energy of the sport in general. It starts again from high school. You've got so many news services that dedicate themselves and have popped up in the last 20, 30 years that just focus on recruiting, meaning who's a 5-star recruit or who's a 4-star recruit coming out of Christian Brothers Academy or Seton Hall Prep or Del Barton High School. These are all high schools in New Jersey, or Archbishop Malloy in New York, or Archbishop Mitty in California, or McQuaid Jesuit or whatever. And which university are they going to sign with? Are they going to sign with Michigan? Are they going to sign with Alabama? Are they going to sign with UCLA or USC? Are they going to sign with Texas? Are they going to sign with Florida State? And people can't get enough of this stuff. They follow the recruitment of high school players when they're 15, 16, 17, 18. And then when you're following these guys at university, the Arch Manning, who's now at Texas, who's the nephew of Peyton Manning and Eli Manning, who had such incredibly successful NFL careers and won Super Bowls as quarterbacks. Now, because Arch Manning, he was being followed when he was in high school in Louisiana, and then there was a battle to follow his recruitment. Where was he going to sign? He signs with the University of Texas. Now it's a case of, Where is he? When is he going to come out? Is he going to declare for the NFL draft? How high in the draft is he going to go? Who's going to draft him? Is he going to stay in college because this year the Oakland Raiders have the first pick in the draft, and maybe he doesn't want to play for Oakland, so he'll stay in college another year at Texas and wait it out so that maybe a different team will get the first pick in the draft.
I think there's a movie of Adam Sandler, Hustle.
Yes.
He's the recruiter and he goes out finding out new talents.
Yeah.
It's more like a scout, right?
Yes. They serve as scouts, that kind of thing. But again, the point is there's this emotional attachment, right? And that exists in football. It exists in basketball in particular. It exists in other sports to a lesser extent in ice hockey and baseball. It's most fervent in basketball and football. It doesn't exist in cricket because there's no grassroots cricket. You don't have high school cricket teams.
True.
You don't have university NCAA scholarship cricket teams. So there's no cricket draft. Okay. You know, again, draft night is a huge deal. You see these players at the NFL draft and the NBA draft, when they're getting ready to be picked, they'll spend $5,000 on a custom suit because they want to look sharp when their name is announced as being drafted, and they walk on the stage and they accept the cap for the team that's just drafted them. And it's a huge moment in their lives. And MLC tried to do that. Major League Cricket tried to do that. They had a draft to start the inaugural season. And I thought that was one of the coolest things that MLC did. But what was fascinating to me to observe at draft night, and they held it at NASA Space Center in Houston. It was a really cool event. They tried to build it up and make it special, and I thought they did a fantastic job with it. But the draft was for all players eligible to play for the franchise. Okay. And so you had guys in their 20s and 30s who had been immigrants coming over from South Africa or Pakistan or India who were in the draft pool alongside 18, 19, 20-year-old American kids, right? And the guys from overseas, not all of them, but a significant percentage of them showed up to the draft wearing like jeans and a hoodie, okay? And they get their name announced and they just show up and they don't care. Somebody like Sanjay Krishnamurti, okay, who's an American kid and born in Oregon, spends his time growing up between Arizona and spent some time in India, but came back. He's in California. You talk to him, he's got an American accent. He's got American mannerisms. Okay. To your point about, you know, an American face, finding an American face in cricket. I mean, he comes to the draft and he bought a new suit. Okay.
Because he knows the culture.
He knows the culture, right? He's thinking draft night means I get a suit. I look sharp. I look my best. This is my moment where I'm being introduced to the sports fraternity. And the excitement that he had was incredible for when his name got called on draft night. And he messaged me after the fact and said, "Hey, Peter, did you get a photo of me? Please, if you can you send it? Because I want to share with my family. This was an important moment in my life." And those things need to be developed on a more consistent basis in cricket. You need to develop a high school sports culture so that where I went to high school, Seton Hall Prep, I mean, we've had guys go and play professional baseball. In my class, I had a classmate of mine, Eric Duncan, who was drafted in the first round of the baseball draft by the New York Yankees. Wow. He signed $1 million signing bonus as an 18-year-old. And a couple days before the draft, he was sitting next to me in English class. Okay. I knew him, close enough. I wouldn't say we were like friends or best friends, whatever, but casually he was an acquaintance. Okay.
So I think, I'll just interrupt you here. I think, the problem with the American cricket along with this franchise is, because we're the neighbors of India and we have the same kind of culture. So the IPL system works pretty fine in Nepal. That happened to Nepal Premier League. So, and what's happening with the US is they're putting up the same model in a country which already has a different kind of model. The one you mentioned, which is more glamorized, which is more about connecting with the fans and more about all these things that America has already in different of its sports. So cricket being taken there, it has to be played, not just played in the game, but played all around the franchise wise in an American style. But what's happening is it's happening more in the subcontinent style, or let's say the IPL style.
And this is one of the great issues with American cricket, the identity crisis. If you look at MLC or some of the other initiatives that have happened, there's an element of confusion in terms of, do they want to associate more with cricket culture, the way cricket is administered around the world, and where it has been so successful in India with the IPL, and the IPL auction, one of the biggest events in cricket. Forget the on-field stuff. I would argue there's more viewership for the IPL auction than even some IPL matches themselves. The IPL auction has become a phenomenon in a similar way to the NFL draft. The NFL draft is one of the most genius things that's ever been produced in American sports marketing, because you'll get 100,000 people who will show up to the draft site, whether it's Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is essentially a tiny, Green Bay, Wisconsin has, 200,000 people. It's hardly a city, compared to New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. But Green Bay has the Packers. Okay. And they held the draft there a year or two ago, and 100,000 people show up out of nowhere, traveling from all different cities, literally just to hear names read out on a piece of paper. They're not watching a football game.
True.
They're showing up to hear the next prospect coming out of UCLA or Alabama or Ohio State or whatever, who is now going to join their team. Okay. And in a similar way, the IPL auction, the viewership that attracts purely to see names drawn out of a pot, and then the IPL owners hold up the auction panels, do I have 10 lakh, 20 lakh, 30 lakh, 40 lakh, 50 lakh, 1 crore, 1.5 crore, 2 crore, and the panel goes up. It's incredible drama.
Exactly.
I understand why people watch that. I watch it. Everybody watches it. It's amazing television.
Yes.
Okay. And, so there's that in the cricket culture, which is successful. Okay. And you see that trying to be copied. There's been kind of a tug of war in other franchise setups. Do we try to go with the draft model? Okay. So CPL had a draft. PSL used the draft model. The 100 used the draft. Big Bash has had the draft in the past. Or do we go with the auction model? The auction model is pretty popular too. And it's beneficial for the players in a lot of ways, because if there's a bidding war, it drives up the price that they're going to earn, versus a draft. The draft, you're essentially locked into the pay scale slot for a first round player, second round player, third round player, whatever. But within America and in cricket in America, you've got this identity crisis where the people in charge have never been able to figure out, do we want to have cricket come into America and we follow the cricket traditions and go that way? Or do we want it to become Americanized and bring in all the bells and whistles that are successful with other sports and just tack those on to cricket? And I've seen what's been tried in terms of just forcing cricket and the cricket culture onto America, and it hasn't transitioned in an ideal way or in an optimal way. And I say that in the sense of, the people who are already cricket fans appreciate all the cricket stuff that's brought in and done at cricket events in the US. Okay. But if you're trying to cross over into the mainstream sports culture, that stuff doesn't register. People don't identify with it. They want to identify with what they're used to in terms of American cultural experience when you go into a stadium venue. And so, again, from that standpoint, whether you're talking about grassroots, and again, having high school cricket, having university cricket, having a draft, all those elements, as well as, something further afield, when you're talking about American faces, I mean, to bring it back to that point, How do you get American faces? How do you get people to buy into cricket? How do you get people supporting cricket? If you compare it to soccer or football, having Messi and having Beckham is great, but at some point, America needs a Christian Pulisic.
True.
You know, they need a Clint Dempsey.
True.
Bring a Clint Dempsey again to circle it back to the university point. I went to Creighton University, which is in Omaha, Nebraska, and Creighton had an incredibly successful soccer team. The year before I got there, they went to the national championship game. And I believe they lost to University of Connecticut. But Creighton was always an extremely competitive soccer football team. And they would host a tournament on campus every year. Creighton had a 5,000 seat stadium. They had one of the biggest on-campus soccer stadiums of any university in the country. Soccer was taken very seriously at Creighton. And I was fortunate enough that I was able to broadcast games. I was part of the student broadcast team for 3 years doing men's and women's soccer games. So I got to do NCAA tournament games and high-level games.
You're doing the commentary?
Doing the commentary, yeah. It was on web streamed. So they would play, at the time they were in the Missouri Valley Conference, but their non-conference schedule, the Missouri Valley Conference wasn't that competitive, but their non-conference schedule, they would schedule elite teams. So we would have St. John's and Indiana and UCLA coming to Creighton. Creighton is a small Catholic school. It's got 4,000 enrollment in Omaha, Nebraska. It's in the middle of nowhere. But you would have UCLA in Indiana, St. John's, big schools coming to Creighton to play soccer. They would never do that for basketball, at least at that point in time. Okay. But soccer was a big deal. Okay. And my first year, they held a tournament. It was a 4-team tournament. I can't remember who the other two teams were, but one of the teams along with Creighton was Furman. Now Furman, it's a small university in South Carolina, and their big star was Clint Dempsey.
Wow.
Okay. So when Clint Dempsey was 21 years old, way before he played for the USA national team, he was an up and coming star being identified playing for Furman at NCAA level soccer. And I got to see him at Creighton. Okay. And again, people identified, all right, people who went to Furman, people who were following college soccer, like, oh, watch out for Clint Dempsey. He could become something. And then he goes and he plays at Fulham and becomes a star in the Premier League. I think he finished second behind Wayne Rooney one year in goals in the Premier League for Fulham. And then he goes to Spurs. He goes and plays for the national team, becomes one of the most high profile players for the USA national team. People get behind Clint Dempsey. They get behind Landon Donovan. They, get behind Tim Howard. Again, identifying with the local community. Tim Howard's from New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey. My mother was a high school Spanish teacher at a very prominent high school in New Jersey. Tim Howard was one of her students.
Wow.
Okay. So when Tim Howard is having success at Everton or with the USA national team, the people at my mom's school are saying, hey, let's follow Tim Howard. Tim's doing amazing for USA. Tim's going to the World Cup. Let's get behind Tim Howard. Let, go Timmy, all that kind of stuff. You don't have that in cricket, unfortunately. And so you need that. You need, the names on paper. People make such a big deal of, oh, well, there's too many South Asians that, the South Asian diaspora controls cricket in America. They do. It's a fact. It's a reality. Okay, for better or worse. So, that may be a good thing or a bad thing, but the fact that there's no high school cricket being played, you need more Sanjay Krishnamurtis.
Yes. You
need more Sai Mukamalas. Again, Sai Mukamala out of New Jersey. The people in New Jersey who have been a part of his development are very proud of Sai. You look at the name on the paper and it's Sai Mukamala. Oh, that sounds very Indian. You hear Sai Mukamala talk. He's got a thick American accent. He talks like he's from New Jersey. Okay. And so the people from New Jersey rally behind Sai a lot more than they would get behind, take your pick of another player who's in the team, whether it's a Milan Kumar or somebody else. People are proud that they're playing for USA and representing USA, but Milan Kumar played all of his developmental cricket in India. Harmeet Singh played all of his developmental cricket in India. So there's not that emotional attachment for people in Texas or people in California or people in New Jersey, whatever. Whereas Sai, anybody who's been part of his development in New Jersey, playing local cricket in New Jersey, knows, right, this guy's from New Jersey and he's playing for USA and he's making us proud. Sanjay Krishnamurti is doing the same thing in California. You need more of those players. Stephen Taylor, when he was in the USA team, similarly, the amount of pride people had for Stephen Taylor coming out of Florida, as a kid, son of Jamaican immigrants, and he had an incredible career for USA, over the course of 14 years. But he was born and raised in Florida, played all of his developmental cricket in Florida. He scored 162 against Nepal in 2013 in Bermuda in Division 3. And, it's one of the highest scores USA's ever had in cricket. But, whether the name looks American, Stephen Taylor, or looks Indian, Sanjay Krishnamurti, or Simon, they look Indian, and how are people going to get behind that? They don't care. Americans don't care about that. If they're following somebody in the Olympics, Rulon Gardner won gold medal for USA in the Olympics in wrestling. Okay. He beat Alexander Caroline, who at the time was a legend in wrestling, and I think he'd won 3 straight gold medals, hadn't lost a match in something like 14 years. And Rulon Gardner slays Alexander Caroline, this big, intimidating Russian, wins a gold medal. Nobody would have cared if his name was Rulon Gardner or Kumar Patel, right? If he's representing America and he's been born and brought up in Texas or California, New Jersey or Montana, like Rulon Gardner, people rally behind that and they get behind that. So whether the name is Stephen Taylor and, that looks American, and Sanjay Krishnamurti, that doesn't look American. I never understand those arguments. If the kid has been brought up in the community and there's an emotional attachment, he's played high school football, or Rulon Gardner did high school wrestling at his high school, or if there was high school cricket and that would happen, and you have students, their fellow student body members coming out to watch the cricket matches, and they say, I remember when Sanjay Krishnamurti, he hit a winning 6 in the state championship game to win the California state championship. Just like you can say, I remember when LeBron hit the winning 3-pointer for St. Vincent St. Mary to win the Ohio State basketball championship. That will help embed it more in the American culture. And this whole argument of, the names don't look American enough will disappear.
So while we're talking about Nepal and USA, the grassroots, right? Let's take this to the associate thing, because being a full member country nation and an associate is a big difference, right? So what do you think are the limitations being an associate nation with not a full member nation? What benefit could teams like Nepal and USA get if we were a full nation? We would play the test game.
Just the opportunity to play more matches in a high profile way. If you look at the fixture lists that Nepal has, again, we mentioned before the West Indies win. That was significant. If you can say Nepal played West Indies, A, and then B, Nepal beat West Indies, the level of respect that generates is tremendous. And it gets more eyeballs, not just in Nepal and the West Indies, but further afield. West Indies historically has been in that sphere of Australia, England, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, South Africa, whatever, right? So in those countries, you get more people aware of what's going on. I mean, again, if you look at the impact the World Cup has had on soccer in terms of getting guys from other countries, to get opportunities in the more established franchise football competitions. Okay. You mentioned before we were talking off camera, Keisuke Honda. Okay. Japan co-hosting the World Cup in 98.
Or 2002.
Or 2002, right? Sorry. 98 was France. The opportunities that opened up for players from Japan and South Korea in terms of going to play in Europe, whether it's playing in the English Premier League or playing in Italy or whatever other leagues. Suddenly, people who would never potentially have seen Japan or South Korea play before, well, they make it out of the group stage. I forget if it was South Korea went to the semifinal. South Korea did, right?
Yeah, they did.
And it's like, wow, South Korea is going to the semifinal. They're just as good as Germany or Italy or England or Argentina, right? And hey, we didn't know these guys existed, but maybe we should be recruiting more and signing some of these guys to play for Manchester United or Arsenal or Spurs or Milan or Juventus or Dortmund or Bayern Munich, whatever. Okay. So for cricket, when those players get that opportunity, I mean, having that visibility means instead of Dipender Singh Airi just playing in the Nepal Premier League or playing in the T20 in Canada, okay, maybe it opens up the door for him to go to the IPL or go to the Big Bash. I mean, we've seen Sandy Blamachane have that opportunity. But I think one of the great unfortunate things that has happened historically is it's these things have only happened recently. I mean, Paras Khadka is somebody who should have been playing franchise cricket. Okay. His career came at the wrong time, unfortunately. Okay. If Paras Khadka came along now and he started his career in 2026, he would be a franchise star in different overseas leagues. His career, for better or worse, came in the mid 2000s through 2020, 2021. And he didn't get to take advantage of some of these opportunities that guys are getting now. He's obviously huge in Nepal. Everybody knows him in Nepal. I feel like he should have been a bigger name overseas. And people in the associate world definitely appreciate him. I appreciate him. I got to see him play so many match-winning innings for Nepal at a time where they relied so heavily on him because the batting was not with a lot of depth. It was him and Sharad Vasakar and Gyan Jamala. Okay. And Gyan Jamala is another one. I thought Paras was more consistent. Gyan Jamala, I thought, was far more flashy and dynamic and exciting. I would argue his game was even better suited from a batting standpoint to franchise cricket and would have gotten a lot of attention because he plays the sweep and the reverse sweep and some incredibly exciting shots, and his fielding was electric. And again, Gyan Jamala's career came at the wrong time. Nepal didn't have the visibility. Nepal didn't have ODI status. Nepal didn't have T20I status for the majority of their careers. Getting them test status, getting them full member status means they're playing potentially, if not India, getting opportunities to play against South Africa or Australia or England. And I think one of the things people forget about is that cricket is often very siloed in a lot of places. People care about their own countries or what's happening domestically for them, but they don't often pay attention to what's happening outside their own bubble. So we're talking about Paras Khadka and Sandy Blamachane and Dipender Singh Airi and Rohit Paudel and all these guys right now. There are a hell of a lot of people in the English cricket community who would have no idea who the hell we're talking about right now. They only care about the county season. They'll watch the 100. They'll watch the Ashes. Okay, they'll watch England play in the World Cup. I guarantee you, there will be fans in England who the first time they'll hear about Dipender Singh Airi is when England plays against Nepal in Mumbai during the World Cup. They will say, I'm a hardcore cricket fan. I follow cricket. I follow cricket everywhere. What they really mean is they follow England cricket everywhere. Okay. So if this is the first time that Nepal is going to be coming up against England, they're going to see Dipender Singh Airi run out Joss Butler. And they'll say, who the hell is this Dipender Singh Airi guy? Why haven't I seen him before? Why is he not playing in other franchise competitions? And oh my God, how electric he is at backward point. And wait a second. Rohit Paudel. Jeez, his batting is incredible. Why haven't I seen him before? because you're paying attention to England only, England county cricket, whatever. If Nepal is playing England on a more regular basis, rather than just coming up against them for the first time in the T20 World Cup in Mumbai, again, it opens up the door for exposure, notoriety, opportunity, earning potential, and respect, and saying, hey, somebody who's watching from England, they might say, well, instead of taking our money and trying to recruit Andre Russell or Steve Smith or Mitchell Marsh when we're trying to draft somebody in a franchise situation or have a franchise election, you know what? Let's keep our eye on that Dipender Singh Irie.
True.
And then that opens up doors, not just for Dipender Singh Irie, but if he does well enough, then they'll say, you know what? We need to establish a scout in Kathmandu. Let's send some people to Nepal and recruit local talent and scout. Because wait a second, this is where this guy came from. There's got to be more of him.
True.
Which is what happens in baseball. I mean, if you look at the baseball teams, Major League Baseball, every single one has a Dominican academy. In the 80s and 90s, there was such an influx of players from the Dominican Republic and Latin America broadly that suddenly, instead of just stumbling upon a Latin American star by accident, whether it's Sammy Sosa or Jose Reyes or somebody else, it's, well, actually we should be putting, roots there and looking for kids on an active basis rather than hoping and praying that one just falls into our lap. You're starting to see it emerge in Japan. Started, 30 years ago now. Hideo Nomo was the first modern player that came from Japan as a pitcher, and he started to have success with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And then about 5 years later, Ichiro Suzuki signs with the Seattle Mariners, and you have the whole Ichiro phenomenon. He wins the Rookie of the Year and the MVP in his first season with the Mariners. Okay, and then more and more players started to come over from Japan. And now you look, Shohei Ohtani is the highest paid player in professional baseball, $700 million contract, which is absurd. And that doesn't include all the endorsements he's collected with companies in Japan, companies in America, companies elsewhere, whatever. And Shohei Ohtani, people associate baseball with being an American sport. Oh, but baseball is something only the Americans play. Tell that to the Japanese. Okay. Tell that to other people in
even
baseball.
In South Korea, it's good sports.
Absolutely. Yeah. Baseball is big in Korea. It's big in Taiwan. It's big in Australia. The first overall draft pick in the Major League Baseball draft a year or two ago, Travis Bazana, I believe his name was, is Australian. First Australian taken first overall in the Major League Baseball draft. Now, he went to university at Oregon State. So he left Australia when he was 17, 18, played his college baseball at Oregon State, but he developed almost all of his baseball in Australia. So teams have started to recruit more out of Australia. Teams have started to invest heavily in finding players in Japan. Okay, that started with Nomo. It took 30 years to develop somebody of the caliber of Shohei Ohtani, who's making $700 million. But the point is, when you open your eyes and see what else is out there, it helps further the sport in these other countries, opens up earning opportunities. So hopefully, if the administrators at the ICC are paying attention and appreciate the fact that cricket is a sport that needs to be nurtured and invested more in a place like Nepal, and these players should be given more opportunities, not out of pity, but out of merit. They deserve to be there. If Nepal can show that they can stand toe to toe with England, they came so close to beating South Africa in 2024. Probably should have won that game.
Yeah.
Okay. They got over the line against the West Indies, but that was outside of World Cup. Okay. A lot more visibility during the World Cup. Okay. If they can beat England during the World Cup,
it's going to be big.
The amount of exposure and opportunities and eyeballs that will absorb that is going to be unprecedented. And if people think Nepal cricket has come quite far in 2026, just imagine how much further they can go if they can notch a win over England or advance to the Super 8s
Now, about this England thing, I've been arguing with a lot of people, especially we have this show called Cow Corner. That's a cricket live podcast I do with former cricketer Prithu Baskota. I'm sure you have heard.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He was there in 2010 at the Riot game.
Yes.
I'm pretty certain. I think he was there.
He's currently playing in the US. So he plays the minor league. So he just got an injury, small injury. So he's back for treatment.
Yeah.
So we're also planning for the World Cup, planning to go watch together. So talking about this, just you mentioned about, see, Nepal has the abundance of left-arm spinners. And recently we found a new spinner who's a left-armer, and he's especially a mystery spinner. I remember when I was a kid growing up, it was Anil Kumble who used to be called a mystery spinner. But now Nepal has that in their firepower. And looking at England, they've always struggled with those spinners, especially from the Indian subcontinent. Now, though we technically, Nepal doesn't belong to the Indian subcontinent category, we are surrounded by India, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And looking at our history, you mentioned the legend himself, Sakti Gauchan, Basanta Regmi, plays like this, and now Sher, we have Sandeep too, and from bowling from another end we have Lalit Rajvanshi. So looking at the spin attack of Nepal and looking at Wankhede, do you think Nepal has a good chance, or what kind of chance do you see against England?
Historically, I think the failure of Nepal to win some of these matches has come down to the batting. So spin will be important, and restricting England will be important. But why did they lose that game to South Africa? They couldn't chase a low total. Historically, it's always been the batting that has held Nepal back. So yes, they're going to need the spinners to come through, but they're going to need Rohit Patel to step up. They're going to need Dipender Singh Airi to step up. They're going to need some other players in the batting lineup to step up. And that, to me, is what's going to be the determining factor in whether or not Nepal really can get over the line and pull off one of these upsets that they've been so close to getting before. And hopefully they'll be able to do it at some point in this World Cup.
And I want to go back to the fact that linking our current topic, that yeah, it's completely true that once we play against England in the World Cup and the kind of performance we show, because talent never gets hidden, talent will be shown. Even if Nepal loses the game, there will be some players who will definitely get appreciated, right? So especially Dipender Singh Airi, and we have Kushal, who is now not to be called a part-time spinner because he takes good wickets. And then we come down to the spinners, and maybe the whole World Cup, I have a feeling that World Cup will show that Nepal is good with left arm spinners. And I think that's going to be an important part for all the left armers of Nepal playing to be able to play the franchise abroad. I think this World Cup is pretty important from that perspective too, especially the spinners, left arm.
Well, you brought up Kushal Malla. I haven't mentioned him before, but he's somebody.
Kushal Bhurtel.
Oh, Kushal Bhurtel. But there's other players who the depth of Nepal is much better than it was a couple years ago. And that's contributed to the success. So, again, part of the problem why they struggled in the past was it was Paras Kadka, Gina Jamala, Shakti Gauchan, Sant Regmi, and
Sharad
Vasakar. And if those guys didn't perform, then everything else collapsed around them. So you had three guys everybody was depending on the batting side. You had two guys everybody was depending on the bowling side. And then if that doesn't work out, or if they get injured, or if something else happens, there were weak links and spots that other teams could dissect and attack, where, all right, this team is gonna fold at some point. You can't do that as easily now against Nepal. And I think that again is something to give them credit for, that I think they've identified where they've gone wrong in the past and where they have suffered, and said, hey, we've got to find some better talent and develop it, and create healthy competition too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that's great that's coming out of the Nepal Premier League too, mm-hmm. is developing and identifying more local stars who put pressure on the established players. Mm. I mean, Paras Katka was tremendous for Nepal, and again, and Jamal, and they were superb. But I mean, you look at Steve Smith, he was dropped for Australia. Mm. Michael Clark was dropped for Australia. Mm. Some of these guys in other teams and other setups, the competition is strong enough that if they slip up and there's lapses and they go through lulls, well, you've got a guy nipping at their heels who's waiting to come and take their spot, and they've got to earn it and keep it. And there's constant pressure internally where they know if they can't maintain a certain level, they're going to get left out. I don't know if Paras Katka ever faced that internally from Nepal.
I think that problem is with all the associate nations.
I mean, Stephen Taylor.
You don't have a depth.
Yeah, Stephen Taylor, same thing. If Stephen Taylor for USA was in a more robust setup, he probably would have been dropped at some point in his USA career much earlier than 2024. Okay. He was able to survive periods of poor form and bad patches in his career because USA didn't have anybody else to select. Now, why is Stephen Taylor out of the team now? Because you've got Andres Klaus, you've got Milan Kumar, you've got Sandra Krishnamurthy, you've got Simon Kamala, you have got Harmeet Singh, you've got a factory line of players who are all performing now domestically. Part of that is the impact of Major League Cricket and the greater level of competition and the greater caliber of talent that's being produced and that's part of the system now, so that USA is not in a situation where, well, if Stephen Taylor doesn't perform, well, we have to keep picking him no matter what because we don't have anybody else to choose from. And so if he's in a tournament where he's not scoring any runs, well, we just gotta deal with it. Now it's, well, Stephen Taylor's not scoring runs. We're gonna drop him. We're gonna pick Simon Kamala. We're gonna pick Andres House. And so, again, I think Nepal Premier League, the rise of that means you're not going to have situations in the future where, it could happen one day. Rohit Paudel suddenly goes out of form. Dipendra Singh Hari suddenly goes out of form. If you've got players performing domestically, you say, all right, Dipendra, if you're not performing, we're leaving you out on this tour. We've got other options we can call upon. And that's happening. Lala Rajbanshi has been in and out of the team from memory. He's not been a permanent fixture. And even Sandeep Lamachane has been out of some matches. I mean, he didn't play from memory. He did not play in the win over West Indies in Sharjah. Okay. If you look at the Nepal team, I don't know, as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, when he first came onto the scene, the thought of leaving Sandeep Lamachane out would have been unthinkable. No, he's got to play every game. Look at all the wickets he's taken. Well, now, if he's got a dip in form, well, we've got bowling depth. We can win a game without him. And I think that going into this World Cup, again, a match against England, it shows the healthy competition that's been developed internally means better competition, better players, better performances overall for the teams, whether it's in Nepal, USA, Namibia. You can go throughout the associate world and look at other teams, and that is going to put them in a good position going forward.
So we've been all talking about franchise and everything. So we're basically talking about the shortest format of the game, right? So I had this conversation with Andrew Leonard too when he was in the podcast that even him from being an associate nation at a point, do you feel the 20 overs game is killing more of the 50 overs game? Because I think 50 overs cricket is very important for all the associate nations if they are to get the full member nation. And playing test cricket, it's not just about surviving those 5 days. It's about how you groom your youngsters with the red ball and the white ball. The red white ball argument has been going on so long for my podcast. Every time there's someone from cricket, because cricket in the 90s in Nepal was all about red ball. White ball was a privilege for us to see. We had to get it from India. If some relatives were coming back, I used to ask them for a white ball. But now the red balls have disappeared, not just from the top of the iceberg, but from the grassroots too. We don't see much of the red ball, right? So how important do you think that is, the 50 overs game itself for associate nations?
I'm a big believer in it. Just having time to bat, develop your skills. I think looking at USA specifically, I would argue Sai Mukamala's development as one of their most impactful openers in T20 cricket. Sai Mukamala, his career strike rate in 18 or 19 innings for USA since making his T20I debut just after the T20 World Cup in 2024. His strike rate is 150. And coming up in New Jersey, he was somebody who took a lot of time to get settled. You know, he would bat in 50 over cricket and 50 over junior tournaments. And he was, I wouldn't exactly call him a grinder, but he would be somebody who would score, you know, if he got a century, it would be off 120, 130 balls. And scoring 50 off 70, 50 off 80, those kind of innings as an opener. And the ability to just get experience, adjust and adapt to different conditions, different bowling situations, different sequences of the game. Just being exposed to the different things you get exposed to, whether it's 50 over cricket or 4-day cricket, whatever. I think that's contributed significantly to the fact that when he opens in T20 cricket, he can very quickly size up a situation and condense it to, all right, this is the type of bowling that I would attack with the power play in 50 over cricket or at the death in a 50 over match, and how I'd approach it, or based on the field setting, whatever. And instead of taking 10 overs to figure that out, well, he can condense that into 6 overs in a power play in T20 cricket. Or if he was simulating a situation batting in the final 10 overs in 50 over cricket, well, he can simulate, you know, condense that to batting in the final 4 overs in T20. And I think that, again, has played a significant role in why he's got 150 strike rate in T20 cricket. So there's definitely a very impactful element that playing in these longer forms have. The problem is balancing it out financially. I don't know. A lot of this stuff is hypothetical, theoretical. I don't know what a 4-day competition would look like revenue-wise in Nepal, because it's never existed. If you look at the example of Ireland, their 3-day competition has been a huge financial drain on them and their resources, because they're taking their profits from T20s and 50 over matches that they've hosted against South Africa or Bangladesh or other countries, and they're using that money to subsidize a 3-day competition that 5 people might show up and watch. And in terms of a television broadcast, it's an online stream where 200 people might watch in a day. Okay, they're not getting ads, they're not getting other sources of revenue. If they want that 3-day competition, they know they're going to have to eat a significant financial loss. They see the benefit of doing that, and they're willing to absorb that loss, because in the long run, they feel, all right, if we can get Harry Tector or Paul Sterling or Andy Balbirnie playing 3-day cricket, giving them time to Manila and ability to adapt and adjust to different situations, then hopefully they'll be able to translate that to when Ireland goes and plays in the T20 World Cup and they go to Sri Lanka and they're playing the conditions there. and it'll help them out. The benefit of the test countries is that a lot of those structures were in place for 100 years. So everything was already set up. And for a significant duration at the time, those things did generate money. Nowadays, none of those things generate money. Nobody shows up to watch Sheffield Shield cricket or 4-day cricket in South Africa or the West Indies or, the only place where you might have mild attendance in terms of domestic 4-day cricket would be in England. But again, I've been to a handful of 4-day games in Manchester and, a couple hundred people. I remember meeting somebody on the outside of a ground in Manchester at Old Trafford who walking along with them and they, oh man, it was husband and wife and they were thrilled because they were going to be attending the first cricket match and somebody had gifted them tickets and they're like, wow, this is going to be a big deal. I can't wait to get in. And then we're approaching the gates and they're like, wow, I thought there would be a bit more traffic pulling into the car park. Where is everybody? And I politely I had held back at this point, but I politely had to explain to them, like, I think there's a reason why you were gifted free tickets today. It's because nobody wants to go. And they were just trying to unload them onto you. And we get inside the gates and because before we got there, she was looking at her tickets saying, oh, you've been here before to Old Trafford. Is this a good section? Am I going to have a good view of the cricket? And I was like, well, even if you don't have a good view from that specific seat, you can pretty much pick your seat when you walk in. There's not going to be a security guard holding you back. And, we get in the gates and sure enough, there might be 200, 300 people there in a stadium that seats 22,000. And then the penny dropped and she's like, oh, okay, now I know why I got given free tickets. And I don't have to be so concerned about, is the seat a good view? I can literally sit anywhere I want on this ground. Okay. And that's for a country that's had first class cricket for 150 years. Okay. In England. So as wonderful as it would be for multi-day cricket to exist in Nepal or USA or Canada or Namibia or any of the associate countries, Scotland, Netherlands on the fringe. I mean, one of the most exciting matches I ever covered personally was a 4-day Intercontinental Cup match between Scotland and the Netherlands in 2015. It was just after the 2015 T20 World Cup qualifier that Scotland and Ireland had co-hosted. And Netherlands won an incredibly thrilling 4-day match, went down to the final day. Peter Bourne took, I think it was like 4 for 6 or 4 for 7 in a spell that Scotland looked like they were in control of chasing the target on the final day, the 4th innings target. Peter Bourne comes in and wipes Scotland out in the space of like 4 overs and wins the match for the Netherlands. That match was in Den Haag for Voorburg. I think there might have been 6 people at the match, which is a shame. And so, a lot of people, again, when I talked earlier about people being siloed in cricket, people just kind of having tunnel vision in terms of they know it's in their own community and they've got this impression that it will transfer easily to other communities. There's been so many discussions over the years about, Scotland's going to be the next test nation or Netherlands is going to be the next test nation before the emergence of Nepal. Okay. And, they just need to get 4-day cricket up and running and they'll be set. Well, nobody would support that in the Netherlands from a fan standpoint. I'm sure the players wouldn't mind. Any player is never going to say no to getting another playing opportunity, but who's going to show up? Who's going to buy tickets? What's going to generate revenue? Where are you going to get sponsors? 4-day cricket, who's going to take time off work? People have time to go to a T20 or an ODI if it's on a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon when they don't have to take off work. And it's easy to fit around their family life and their work schedule and all that. Part of the decline of attendance figures in different parts of the world for first class cricket, who has time to take off work, to take off school, to show up to a 4-day cricket match? Unless you're retired with a significant amount of disposable income, which is who I often see when I'm at these games. The people who have time to go to a 4-day match in England, more often than not, are people in their 60s and 70s. A, because they grew up with it. Yeah. This is their concept of cricket. Maybe they don't appreciate T20 the way younger generation does. But also, if they're a pensioner, they don't have to go to work. They've got time to kill. They've got nothing to do. They can show up and it's not going to impact their life in a detrimental way where, they have to petition their boss to ask for a day off or something else, but are they taking their kids or their grandkids? No, they're showing up on their own. So that's a challenge that you have to overcome. And unfortunately, in associate countries, they're mostly cash strapped enough as it is. They don't have disposable income as a board to say, all right, we've got an extra £2 million or $2 million or 2 million euros if you're in the Netherlands to say, oh, we can afford to just light it on fire for the sake of starting a 3-day or a 4-day competition. Maybe Nepal will be in that situation where they can light that kind of money on fire because they're getting all sorts of sponsors and revenue from different sources. I don't know. I don't believe that Nepal is currently in that situation right now. But these are all the things that need to be taken into consideration when you're trying to establish a multi-day cricket system that hasn't been there historically. Again, it would be wonderful and it would definitely assist in the development of players, but you've got to be pragmatic and understand the realities of the current financial climate and how things need to be able to operate to sustain themselves.
So we did used to have our multi-day cricket. The red ball was called J Trophy, which again last year it restarted. I was there. It happened in 2 cities simultaneously. I was there at one. I felt sick. I got back, a different story. So, but at that point, I saw Sandeep was playing one of the games. So every time Sandeep played, there was a crowd that came in to just watch Sandeep. But the venues, it looked a bit empty. But I think Test cricket, as you mentioned, it was not designed for what the world is today. That's why we have 50 overs. After Test, when Test was fading, they got in the 50 overs. Then when 50 overs started fading, they got the 2020s, which is a highly commercial sports format because you have those middle overs, you can place ads and everything, right? So now I want to come to a point from the perspective of Nepal and looking at what Nepal Premier League has done in terms of revenue, in terms of sponsorship, in terms of bringing out players like Sher Malla, Bashir Ahmed, who finished in the World Cup squad. I think they are now in the squad, right? So how much of an impact can Nepal Premier League make to Nepali cricket in terms of grooming Nepali talent and bringing foreign players like Jimmy Neesham and other big names? Jason Roy was there. So how much important it can prove to be for Nepal?
Well, just going to the stadium and cover the matches that I've been able to do at this women's T20 World Cup qualifier. I mean, when I think back to my first trip in Nepal in 2010 and looking at TU Stadium when it was, there were no seats.
TU Ground.
TU Ground, yeah. Couldn't call it a stadium by any realistic measure. But now, having arrived here for this tour and knowing what I remember TU looked like in 2010 and 2020 when I was here for the series just before COVID, the 35 all-out series. I know the Nepal supporters are going to love mentioning that. There's going to be no shortage of people who leave comments about that. I have no doubt. When Nepal bowled out USA for 35 in one of USA's worst performances. But it was just people who showed up to watch a match on a grassy dirt, mud hill, people climbing trees to get a view from just over the fences. And it was incredible to see how many people could be crammed in. But to see the stadium now with the chairback seats and more importantly, the lights, being able to have lights, have nighttime cricket. I mean, that's huge. Again, when we talk about getting families and getting people to come out, be able to adapt around their work schedule. When you've got a facility that's got lights and you can host night cricket, that's huge. And just to kind of cycle back a little bit to the point about Test cricket, I think going forward, day-night cricket, a lot of people are resistant to it. I don't understand why. You play these sports, yes, because you enjoy sports, but as a professional, you want to play and further your career. But at the end of the day, a huge element of sports culture are the fans. You can't play sports without the fans. The fans are buying the tickets, and that ticket revenue is going to pay your paycheck as a player or as an administrator. And so I've never understood the resistance to day-night cricket. In 2026, it's a necessity. You have to. You can't deny that or be resistant to it.
I think that's because sports itself is a prime time thing. It's for the night.
Again, it's for people when they get out of work. Now, if you look historically at baseball, for example, baseball used to be a daytime sport. Okay, in America in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and a lot of people, it was a heavily followed sport by radio. I mean, the sports culture and the sports announcing culture and commentating culture, some of the most iconic figures in American sports are radio announcers. They're not TV commentators or TV play-by-play or analysts. Growing up, I mean, some of my heroes in terms of commentators are people like Gary Cohn and Howie Rose, who I would listen to on the radio broadcasts for the New York Mets. And I can vividly remember radio calls just as much, if not more, than iconic television calls. You know, you think about Ian Bishop, you know, Carlos Brathwaite, remember the name and all that. All right. Yes, that's in cricket. I think one of the great unfortunate things about cricket to a certain extent is that there isn't as much of a radio culture in cricket. TMS, Test Match Special, is very famous in England and ABC Radio in Australia. But outside of that, you know, Tony Cozier, he got his start in radio in the West Indies. A lot of people associated Tony Cozier towards the end of his career with television. But Tony Cozier really was, his bread and butter was radio, coming up through the West Indies culture. And I think in modern culture, I think that's kind of been, I don't want to say phased out, but it's become less prominent in cricket. And I think of all the radio broadcasts I grew up with, you know, I remember being in school and like trying to hide a radio earpiece in my ear if there was a baseball game, if it was a baseball playoff game, you know, in September, October, where most baseball playoff games, you know, are at night. But because in the early rounds of the playoffs, you've got 4 games in one day, somebody's going to be playing at 1 p.m. Okay. So if you're a hardcore baseball fan, you know, a sports fan like I was, you would try to sneak a radio in and listen to the game, and you know, you would sit in the back of the class to try and not bring attention to yourself, and you know, you might sit there and be like this, and you got the thing in your ear, and you're just listening to the game and not really paying attention to the teacher. But radio is such a huge part of sports, and I feel like more could be done from that standpoint. Again, whether it's if games are happening in the day, or, you know, people are driving, people in their taxis, people are whatever, they can't immediately have a game in front of them. You know, doing more to get radio broadcasts and radio notoriety, I think would also contribute. And in some ways, I feel like that's been neglected, but you know, that would also help accommodate people who can't be in front of a television at their leisure.
True, because I think there's a beauty of radio commentary. I remember, I think you know the time when you were here, there was load shedding. We didn't have electricity for around 18 hours a day.
A lot has changed in Nepal since my first trip. You know, you mentioned load shedding. I've forgotten about that. I haven't had that on this trip.
Yeah. So, big change, 2017-18. This new guy comes into the electricity authority, changes everything. Now he's currently contesting the elections too. So I think I remember at that time I used to listen to the English Premier League on BBC 5 Live.
Yes.
And even at times when I don't feel opening up my iPad and watching the game, I just turn it on. And the way I think my commentary has been groomed in a way by the radio commentators, and I see the beauty of it. And even I had this argument with the Football Association a few years back that I told them to at least get a radio commentary, because so many games are played in the afternoon and people don't always want to pay for the video broadcast. They don't want to pay for the data to watch the videos online.
Or they just might have something else going on that they can't watch.
Exactly.
If you're at work, you can't be having a screen next to your laptop or whatever job you're doing.
Yes.
Your boss is not going to tolerate that. But if you're very anonymously with an earpiece, it's very common nowadays for people to walk around with headphones or ear pods or whatever, and nobody's going to bother them and say, "Hey, what are you listening to?" or why do you have that? You could be typing or doing different sorts of work, or you could be on a bus or a train or a car, or taxi, whatever. And if you've got earpods in or headphones of some kind and Bluetooth, whatever, nobody has a clue what on earth you're listening to. Most people would assume you're listening to music, but you could be listening to a sporting event.
True.
And so there is a huge amount of value in radio and investing in radio commentary and radio broadcasts. And I wish there would be more emphasis on that and opportunities open up, especially in cricket, because I feel like that's, again, TMS is iconic in England and ABC Radio in Australia, but in other places, especially in the US, I think that's one of the great unfortunate things about cricket culture in the US. When you have franchise leagues and other things starting up, there's so much emphasis on getting a TV feed going. Nobody even gives a thought just to trying to establish a radio broadcast. I mean, this is something I always thought about in the years when I was covering the World Cricket League events around the world and covering USA and covering Nepal and covering other teams, whether it was Afghanistan or, again, Netherlands or Scotland, whatever. It wasn't until 2019, really, when the Icc TV rights deal was negotiated to make sure that more matches were streamed. And the Cricket World Cup League 2, every match is now streamed. Yeah. So people can watch Nepal play ODIs or T20Is, whatever, and they can watch USA play ODIs against Namibia or Nepal or UAE or Oman, right? But it was always, we need to get a TV deal. We need to get a TV deal. Doing a radio broadcast is not as sophisticated. It takes a lot less bandwidth, a lot less energy, and a lot less sophistication in terms of equipment, whatever, compared to a TV. You don't need cameras. You don't need all this other stuff. And so I always thought, I've never understood why in that whole time frame. I started covering cricket professionally in 2009, graduating university in 2007. And again, when I was at Creighton, I mentioned I did the Creighton soccer games, Creighton commentary. We had web stream commentary for the soccer teams. But I did radio commentary for the baseball and the softball teams for 4 years. And I thought it was fantastic just to get the opportunity. Because again, I grew up in a culture where my heroes, some of my broadcast heroes were the radio announcers. Bob Papa doing New York Giants games, NFL. Again, mentioned Gary Cohen, Bob Murphy, Howie Rose. I can go through some others, but I mean, Ian Eagle, those guys, I remember them as radio guys. And, Kevin Harlan, listening to Monday Night Football games with Kevin Harlan doing the broadcasts on the radio. And so when they offered me the opportunity, it wasn't like, we can't offer you the TV broadcast because you're not good enough or, something like that. It was, hey, do you want to do the radio? Creighton baseball didn't have televised broadcasts. Creighton softball did not have televised broadcasts. Their premier broadcast opportunity for those two sports was to do the radio commentary. So when I got the offer to do radio for Creighton baseball and Creighton softball, I jumped at it. I was thrilled. And in the lower echelons of cricket, again, we mentioned TMS in England doing their broadcasts. But in the associate world, where has there been a radio? It's been non-existent. And I feel like there was a huge gap that was neglected and a major missed opportunity where, that famous match in 2018 at World Cricket League Division 2, where Nepal and Canada went down to the final ball on the final day of round robin play. And Karen KC wins it for Nepal, Karen KC Day, everybody knows it now.
Valentine's boy.
It's not February 14th, Valentine's Day. It's Karen KC Day, right? And, there was one of the great frustrations of that day. I was one of, I think, 10 people in the ground who witnessed that. Now, I say witness it with my eyes. There should have been a way to witness it with your ears. Yes. Even if you couldn't set up as the ICC or whoever a video broadcast to transmit the images, what was stopping them from setting up a radio broadcast to do play-by-play and give the sounds of the emotion of the moment? And I was there. I was available. I would have loved to do it. I would have loved to have done it for countless other tournaments. It just was never done because the focus has always been, we need to do TV. We need to do TV. We need to do TV. What's stopping people from doing radio? And I think that would have engaged a lot more people, a lot more fans. I mean, the only things that were coming out of Windhoek that day were, Twitter updates that I was giving for fans. And again, that helped generate a huge following for me for fans from Nepal in terms of the coverage I was able to provide. And I still get notifications to this day. Every February 14th, I'll post a picture that I took of Karen KC or something else from that day to signify this is the anniversary of one of the greatest days in Nepal cricket history and one of the greatest matches. It's the greatest match I've ever covered anywhere in the world. I've covered USA beating Pakistan. I've covered Scotland beating England in Edinburgh in 2018 in what was a thrilling ODI. I've covered a lot of matches over 16 years. To this day, hands down, without hesitation, the greatest match I've ever covered was Nepal, Canada. 1 wicket, 52-run last wicket partnership between Karen KC and Sandy Blamachane. And I've never strayed from that. Even after that Scotland-England match in Edinburgh, even after USA beat Pakistan, those were exciting matches to cover. They were famous wins. They were not the best match, but the most dramatic match I've ever covered. Most dramatic match, the best match I've ever had the opportunity to cover was Nepal versus Canada. I'm one of a handful of people who has that opinion. Because I was one of a handful of people who was actually there. But nobody saw the match. One of the tremendous missed opportunities and frustrations. There was no broadcast of that match. People take it for granted now that you can watch Nepal matches around the world on Icc TV and Cricket Clubs and the other feeds and Fan Code and other outlets that are broadcasting Nepal matches and other matches for associate teams. That match, if that match had been broadcast, whether by radio or by television, you would have so many more media members and fans listing that as one of the greatest matches of all time. Again, that happened in February 2018. The World Cup final between England and New Zealand in the summer of 2019, July 2019.
Yeah.
Okay. The overwhelming majority of the cricket community considers that the greatest ODI of all time, the greatest 50-over match of all time.
Yeah.
Like, went to a super over, World Cup final. It's hard to argue against people who have that view, but that match was televised globally. You had hundreds of millions of people around the world having access to that match, watching from India, Pakistan, England, Australia, the USA. I was in Canada that day. I was actually broadcasting USA versus Canada in an under-19 World Cup qualifier. I was doing my own commentary for USA and Canada. Were competing for a spot to go to the under-19 World Cup in 2020. Okay. That's what I was doing that day. So I didn't even get to watch the full match between England and New Zealand. I was busy doing my own work. I was kind of sneaking a look at the Super Over as it was happening. But that happened at like 7 p.m. in England, which would have been 2 p.m. in Toronto. I was covering the USA Canada game. And at 2 p.m. in Toronto, it would have been like early stages of the second innings of USA and Canada, right? So I didn't even get to appreciate that game in the way a lot of other people do. But why does that game have so much appreciation? Because people were able to see it.
Yeah.
Nobody was able to see the Nepal-Canada game in 2018. If they had, that game would be spoken about in the same way that the England-New Zealand World Cup final is being spoken about. Because if you think of all the things that were up for grabs and at stake, Nepal, whoever won that game was going to go to the World Cup qualifier and have a chance to secure ODI status. UAE was in with a chance. Canada was in with a chance. Nepal was in with a chance. And Nepal had so many dramatic victories up to that point in the tournament. But, again, just to hammer home the point, beat a dead horse here. It's a great sadness for me that I was able to appreciate it and be there in person to witness it. And I can reminisce if I see Karen KC or Sandy Blamachane or Paris Katka, I know what they went through that day. I witnessed it firsthand. literally there's maybe 35 or 40 people on planet Earth who know what happened that day from inside the ground. It wasn't broadcast on radio, it wasn't broadcast on television. And the fact that there was, again, historically, there's been so much emphasis on we need to get a TV deal, we need to get a TV deal. Well, there's nothing that was stopping anybody from, and the excuses are, well, we couldn't get a TV deal because logistically it just costs too much. Got to get all the equipment in, we got to get all the setup, the wiring, blah, 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 blah. And it's going to cost too much money and it's just not worth it. You don't have that issue with radio. And I feel like it's been neglected, and hopefully going forward, it's something that can be corrected. I don't have faith that it will.
I think that relates to the song Video Kill the Radio Star. Because I feel the same, especially with Nepal cricket. There was a time when we call it the brick phone, right? This dumb phone, small one, the tuk-tuk one. We call it in Nepali, we call it tuk-tuk phone. So we have these words that are not there in English. So it's like tuk-tuk, tuk-tuk. Like eating fast, we eat guam guam khane, guam guam. So I don't think that those words are there in English. So there was a time when we used to get updates. We used to subscribe to those packages and they used to send us over by over updates. And the way things have changed, and especially in Nepal cricket now, towards the end, I want to ask you one question. The first time you came to Nepal, where did you see Nepali cricket going? And today, now you're back again and you see Nepal is already out there a week away from playing the third World Cup. So how far do you think Nepal has come in these years?
Well, I think one of the most significant things, both for USA and Nepal, between 2010 and 2026, is seeing where the women's teams are now.
Yes.
Right? So I'm here for the Women's World Cup qualifier.
Yeah.
And at that point in time for both teams, it was the men's team or nothing. And everything was so focused on the men's teams. And to see that the culture has progressed from the standpoint of infrastructure development, I mean, having the Mopani, having, grounds being developed in Pokhara, and it's not just TU Stadium now. Right?
Yeah.
But beyond the infrastructure and having stadium lights and all that kind of stuff, the amount of investment that's gone into the women's team. I mean, to see, Pooja Mahato being now a growing star, and some of the other players on the Nepal side or on the USA side. USA at the time that we're recording this, they've got a match in less than 24 hours against Scotland, where if they win, they can go to the Women's World Cup in England, right? And in 2010, U.S. women's setup was, I think, 18 months old. They played their first official international, I think, in 2009, I believe it was. And so, some of the players who were here playing for USA weren't even born. I mean, some of the best stars for USA at this tournament are only 16, 17 years old. Literally, they didn't exist. And yet here they are. There was nothing for anybody for women's cricket in 2010. So to see the amount of support that the women's squads respectively are getting, and again, the amount of media attention that the women's team got for Nepal here, I thought was tremendous. Just going to the opening press conference and seeing, there must have been 15 or 20 media members from Nepal who were here to cover the women's team.
Exactly.
That never happened before. It certainly wasn't happening in 2010. Having fan support. I mean, the response that they got for beating Zimbabwe was tremendous. And I think that more than anything, to me, highlights the amount of progress. I mean, we can talk all day long about the men's team and where the men's team has gone, and transitioning from the Paris Katka era and the Gian Jamal era to the current era, led by Rohit Pauda and Dipinder Singh Airi and Sandy Gomachani and all that. And the amount of infrastructure that's happened with the Nepal Premier League being developed and the previous iterations of franchise cricket that were attempted in Nepal, building into the Nepal Premier League. But sometimes the hyper focus on men's cricket has been at the expense of other cricket, whether it's under 19s or women's or just more broader based grassroots initiatives. And to see the scope of investment. Again, it's something as simple as the jerseys, to see the women's team included in the jersey sponsorships and endorsements and kit deals. I mean, again, the USA teams in the past would show up with numbers falling off the back of the jerseys and the names falling off the back of the jersey. They just looked very amateurish in a lot of different ways, not just the on-field product, but literally they would need tape to tape the numbers back onto the jerseys and stuff like that. And to see the way they're performing, Nepal or USA or again some of the other teams here, Scotland, Netherlands who just qualified for their first women's T20 World Cup. They've got Netherlands women's team has a sponsor on the front of their jersey. The sponsors that the Nepal women's team support, the sponsors are not just investing in men's cricket. The corporate sponsors are not just investing in Dipender Singh Airi and Lalit Rajbanshi. They're investing in Pooja Mahato as well. So for me, that shows the level of development and progress for cricket in Nepal, that it's not just a men's sport, it's a sport for women too. And hopefully the team with that win over Zimbabwe is going to inspire more girls to want to pick up a bat and ball and play cricket in Nepal and for Nepal, or just for fun as well. Not everybody's going to get to play for Nepal, but just, again, to play for fun and to play
the
for
dream
enjoyment.
to play for the country at least.
Or just to have fun, and enjoyment, the enjoyment of sport. But that dream can exist. That dream is tangible. They can see it, they can touch it, they can feel it. Say, oh, wow, they beat Zimbabwe. That's a test nation with a lot of history. If Nepal can do that on the women's side, we know what they can do on the men's side. They've beaten the West Indies. They've got ODI status, and they've gone a long way on the men's side. But hey, the women can do it too. It's, cricket in Nepal is not just a sport for the men. The women can play it and do it too. And you're starting to see that now with the women in the USA, hopefully, with the performances they've had beating Thailand, who went to the Women's T20 World Cup in 2020 in Australia. The fact that at that qualifier in Scotland in 2019, I was there. The USA team was humiliated in every single match. I mean, they played Thailand in a warm-up match, and I think they made like 45 all out. I mean, they just got absolutely steamrolled. And even as recently as 2024, I think they made like 55 or 60 against Thailand, bowled out cheaply. They were just non-competitive. And now to see USA beat Thailand ranked 12th. USA came into this event as the lowest ranked team out of all the 10 teams. And USA wins a must-win game against Thailand. The level of parity that's developed, it used to be a huge gap between all these teams. Again, USA used to get embarrassed by Scotland, by Thailand, by Bangladesh. The gap has closed dramatically. In Nepal, came so close against the Netherlands. They almost won that game. Netherlands is going to the World Cup. Nepal lost, I think it was by 2 runs to the Netherlands.
Yes.
Okay.
Scotland. 2 runs. Yeah.
2 runs. Okay.
Very close.
Okay. So, they've beaten Zimbabwe. They've come that close, against other teams. They know how far away they are and what it takes. So in terms of development and, what's the difference I see between 2010 and 2026? I mean, that's the reason why I'm here. I'm covering that event. But, again, I'm used to seeing 20,000 fans support Nepal in the men's side is not unusual. People take that for granted now. Okay. But to see the amount of support that the women's team has gotten and how people are rallying behind them and their development in terms of a quality product on the fields, that to me, I think, stands out in terms of what I noticed between 2010 and 2026. And, the media facilities, and there's nobody throwing bottles and stones and rocks. That hasn't happened on this trip. But
it hasn't happened after that. It was that one particular game.
Everybody's been on their best behavior. The fans here are wonderful. Nepal cricket culture is great. I love coming here. I've never had a bad experience here. I wouldn't even call the riot match with USA Nepal. I wouldn't call that a bad experience. I would call that an adventurous experience. But it was, that didn't make me stop wanting to come back to Nepal. I've come back. Every visit I've had in this country has been wonderful. The people have been so friendly. The hospitality has been tremendous. People like yourself, Avash, and people I've met through Nepalese cricket. And I always recommend anybody who ever gets a chance to come to Nepal to do so. I've been to test nations to cover cricket where I have not had nearly as much fun and enjoyment as I do when I come to cover Nepal. Everything about the culture here is just so wonderful, and it's a place that's, even talking to my wife and my daughter about this trip and covering this tournament, my daughter was not old enough to really remember anything. She's 9 years old now. And so she was only little when I came here in 2020. She doesn't really remember that. And she has no concept of what happened in 2010. But the stories I've told them about this trip, halfway through the trip, my wife messaged me and says, hey, I think maybe we should try and organize a family trip to Nepal. And my daughter's saying, Daddy, I want to go to Nepal. It sounds fun. And if you think maybe when I'm a bit older, we can go to Nepal and take a trip there, because you make it sound so great. And I'm thinking, yeah, let's come back. I've only come here for cricket. Which has been phenomenal, and I've enjoyed every experience. But I thought to myself, maybe I haven't gotten to appreciate as much things that are not cricket related. And I know there's so many wonderful things to experience in this country. And you should come back for a family trip. And so
places you haven't seen. There's so many beautiful places. If you start touring Nepal, it's gonna take you more than 10 years to finish all the good places. I can guarantee you that.
So, it's just, I love coming here. I highly recommend anybody who's never been. And again, bringing it back to the England-Nepal game. If Nepal can spring an upset, or just, again, the visibility of having Nepal play England, maybe that would spur some of the English journalists to say, hey, maybe England should tour Nepal for a couple ODIs or a couple T20s. And having the Barmy Army come out here to Nepal, and having their traveling supporters and their traveling media, and all those things that can happen. So hopefully, whether it's the England supporters who might get a chance to come out here one day, and other touring people. I mean, even the USA players, when they were bowled out for 35 in 2020, it didn't leave such a sour taste in the mouth that they didn't want to come back here. I mean, you had Harmeet Singh here. The players that have come from the US to participate in the Nepal Premier League. You mentioned Sanjay Krishnamurti.
Harmeet has a good following here in Nepal.
Yeah. I mean, the appreciation and support for whether it's USA players, Scotland players, George Munsey. I mean, and the list goes on. People who've come out here, and why do they keep coming back? Why have I come back now for multiple repeat visits? It's a great place to be. It's a great part of the world, and it's a great cricket culture, and I don't see that changing going forward. I think that's only going to keep getting better and better, and I hope to come back for future tours. And looking at the schedule, USA is due on the men's side to tour here later in 2025 for Cricket World Cup League 2 ODI tour. So I've had a 10-year gap from 2010 to 2020. I've had a 6-year gap from 2020 to 2026, but hopefully my next gap between trips might only be a matter of a couple months. I might get a chance to come here twice in 1 year, and
that time you can bring your family.
I can't wait to come. Yeah.
All right. on that note, I think we're coming to the end of the podcast because I just got some message about the hard disk getting hotter. So I think it's we have a problem with that. So thank you so much, Peter. It has been a pleasure. I've been following for you for quite a while, and I said this off here. I know you from a long time ago. I think maybe from the first time you were, because I remember reading what you wrote at that time, and I thought of calling you someday that I'm gonna have my own platform. And there you go. I have my colors of the game, my team. Also, a big thank you to my team because we don't usually shoot on Saturdays. But I had to ask them because everybody has family time, and they said like always up for a shoot with the beautiful game and lovers of the game. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy Nepal, and I hope you to see back next time with your family, and I'll do my part to take you around and your family around in Kathmandu or maybe outside Kathmandu.
Dhanyavad.
All right, thank you so much. And with that, we come to the end. साथीहरु photo खिच्न आइदेऊ न. We'll just take a photo and we'll pull it off.
Awesome.
Did you enjoy?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you.